We continue our series of retrospectives of iconic adventure game franchises. You can already find numerous videos in my channel with the complete history of series like King's Quest, Space Quest, Full Throttle and Loom as a standalone game. Also, if you are a fan of the genre, you can watch my 2-hour documentary on the rise and fall of the adventure games. Please do not forget to support my channel by subscribing and turning on the notifications for it. You can also support me on Patreon, you can find the link to that in the description of this video. The topic of this video is in a way the sequel to my latest retrospective, as the success of the game we have covered there, Full Throttle, led LucasArts to greenlight the next Team Safer's project. Safer's next game, Grim Fandango, is considered one of the best adventures ever made that continues its legacy up until today. It is considered a neo-noir dark comedy combining elements of the Aztec culture with the typical noir movies of the early 20th century cinema. Whether though this critical success led to sequels is another issue of this video, as we will cover what happened after the release of the game. Grim Fandango was originally released in October of 1998 for the Microsoft Windows. It takes place in the Land of the Dead, where recently departed souls gather on their way to the afterlife, the ninth underworld. Good deeds in life are rewarded by better travel packages to the final resting place of the soul, with the best being the number 9 train ticket that makes the journey to the ninth underworld last only 4 minutes. On the other hand, the souls that did not have that many good deeds in life have to make the journey on foot, which takes around 4 years to complete. Many of those souls lose interest through their journeys and end up taking up jobs in the Land of the Dead. There are travel agents from the Department of Death who determine which means of transportation should be assigned to each soul and escort them through their travels in the Land of the Dead. Several varieties of demons also inhabit the world, some of which coexist with human souls and may be summoned for specific tasks such as maintenance or security. All souls begin their journey in El Marrow, the largest city in the 8th underworld, for processing at the Department of Death. The protagonist, Manuel Manny Calavera, is a travel agent at the Department of Death in the city of El Marrow, forced into this job to work off a debt. Manny is frustrated with being assigned clients that must take the 4-year journey and is threatened to be fired by his boss Don Copal if he does not come up with better clients. The game is divided into 4 acts, each taking place on November the 2nd, the Day of the Dead, in 4 consecutive years. Grim Fandango moves away both from the point-and-click interface of the SCUM engine used in previous LucasArts adventure games and of the more recent Insane engine that was used in Team Safer's previous game Full Throttle. It uses instead the Grime engine, which allows players to directly manipulate the movements of 3D characters using keyboard controls. Those are typical of the early 3D era, later on categorized as tank controls, meaning that the left and right arrow keys turn your character and camera on his vertical axis and the up arrow key moves Manny forward in the 3D environment. As Manny walks through the environment, his head will turn to look towards certain important objects or characters. Players may examine, pick up, or use the object Manny is looking at with the appropriate keyboard commands. Although the control scheme and game engine were new to the genre, Grim's core gameplay remains much the same as previous LucasArts adventure games. Its 2 key elements are the humorous dialogue trees and inventory-based puzzles. Players must explore their environment thoroughly to find key objects and may converse with NPC characters or examine their surroundings for hints about the solution. The game is notorious for its difficulty even among the 90s adventure game genre, and some puzzles require not only interaction with the game environment but careful listening to ambient and background sounds. Grim Fandango's development was led by project leader Tim Schafer, co-designer of Day of the Tentacle and creator of Full Throttle. The game was pitched alongside Full Throttle, but it was only given a green light after Full Throttle's success, which also helped Schafer in his pitch, even though Grim Fandango had a peculiar and unusual theme and setting. Development began in 1995. Schafer had received criticism for his previous game being too short and had to create a more complex story to accommodate a game of higher duration. Grim Fandango mixed static pre-rendered background images with 3D characters and objects, and to do so the development team had to move away, as mentioned earlier, from the established SCUM engine and use Grime, which was originally created for another LucasArts game, Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. The development team found that by utilizing three-dimensional models to pre-render the backgrounds, they could alter the camera shot to achieve more effective or dramatic angles for certain scenes. Manny's character alone comprised of more than 200 polygons, and the engine had to be adapted to allow his head to move separately from his body to make the player aware of important objects nearby. There were more than 90 sets and 50 characters in the game to be created and rendered. Additionally, full motion video cutscenes were incorporated to advance the plot, using the same in-game style for the characters and backgrounds to make them nearly indistinguishable from the actual game. Grim Fandango has an original soundtrack that combines orchestral score with music influenced from traditional Mexican, Spanish, and even Celtic cultures. It had also drawn its inspiration from big band music like the works of Duke Ellington and even film composers like Max Steiner. According to Schafer, this decision, along with the high cost of 3D technology, led to the game's increased budget for that era that totaled more than $3 million. Grim Fandango gained critical acclaim upon its release. Critics praised the game's art direction, story, characters and puzzles. It has a 94% score on Metacritic. According to Tim Schafer, the game achieved sales of approximately 500,000 units by 2012, around 50% fewer than Full Throttle had achieved. That led to a lot of people and publications to consider the game as a flop, even though LucasArts stating that Grim Fandango met domestic sales expectations and exceeded them worldwide. However, the overall decline of the adventure game's popularity in the late 90s and early 2000s and the shift of gamers' preferences towards more action-based games led the company to make some tough decisions after Grim Fandango's release. LucasArts had decided to proceed with the development of Monkey Island's fourth installment, Escape from Monkey Island, and drop the project for a new Sam & Max or Full Throttle game. Subsequently, the studio dismissed many of the people involved with their adventure games, stating that, after careful evaluation of current marketplace realities and underlying economic considerations, we have decided that this was not the appropriate time to launch a graphic adventure on the PC. Ultimately, the studio stopped developing video games in 2013 after the Walt Disney Company acquisition of Lucasfilm. Tim Schafer left LucasArts shortly after the game's release and created his own company, Double Fine Productions, in 2000 along with many of those involved in the development of Grim Fandango. In 2014, with the help from Sony, Schafer's studio acquired the Grim Fandango license from Disney. In June of 2014, Double Fine announced a remastered version of the game featuring improved character graphics, controls, and an orchestrated score and directions commentary. The game was released for a wide variety of platforms, including Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, and multiple consoles like the PlayStation, Xbox, and recently the Nintendo Switch. Grim Fandango Remastered has received similar positive reception as the original game, with many critics continuing to praise the game's story, characters, and soundtrack. They also found the developer's commentary to be very insightful to the history of the game. Reviewers were disappointed at the lack of an autosave system, as well as the game not receiving a full high-definition upgrade, leaving the high-resolution characters somewhat out of place with the original 3D backgrounds. You can switch between the original and remastered version with a button click, and the newly rendered characters seem a bit off compared to the pre-rendered backgrounds. Moving money around, however, was greatly improved with the addition of the camera relative option and not just the original tank controls. In an interview with Kotaku after the announcement of the remaster, Schafer stated that he has long considered the idea of a Grim Fandango sequel to further expand on the setting of the game. He felt the story would be a difficult component, as either they would have to figure a means to bring money back from his final reward or otherwise build the story around a new character. That was the full history of Grim Fandango, a great example of the genre's evolution in the late 90s that, again as in the case of Full Throttle, fell victim to a shifting industry after its release that did not allow it to grow and produce sequels. Do not forget to watch my other retrospectives of iconic franchises like Loom, King's Quest, Space Quest, Gabriel Knight and more. You can also find my 2-hour documentary on the rise and fall of the genre. If you like the content of my channel, please consider supporting it by subscribing and turning on the notifications for it. You can also support me at patreon.com and you can find the link to that in the description of this video. We will have more adventure game content soon. Thank you all for watching.